Percentiles are a way for us to compare student data when we might not be using the same measurements. For instance, a student might take a test in one teacher's math class versus a different teacher's math class, and we can compare and see those students how they're doing in math and compare them even though they didn't take the same test. Or if we look across at like big data gathering, when we have students move from one state to another state, they wouldn't be taking the same standardized testing, and they wouldn't necessarily have the same standards that they would need to meet for each grade level. So a percentile kind of strips away the units that we're used to seeing and is a way for us to compare students and kind of place them in some sort of ranking order. So a definition of a percentile is it shows a person or a student's score relative to other scores. So you're going to be comparing students to other students, which is kind of done a whole bunch in education. We always want to know how someone compares to other people. It's kind of a big thing with all of our standardized testing. Now these do have a set notation. So a big capital P for percentile, and then down low would be the actual number value. So my example, I'll do the 91st percentile. So that I have written there means the 91st percentile. Another way of saying that is that 91% of people taking this test scored lower. So 91% of students scored lower than our given person here. So the 91st percentile in test scores would be really, really good. We use percentiles in other things as well, such as medicine. So if you've ever been to a doctor's appointment for a little baby, they'll take their measurements and they'll tell the parents where the child falls in percentiles for their weight, for their head circumference, for their length. And sometimes then you don't want to be in the 91st percentile. If you're not in the 91st percentile for body weight, that means that you're overweight and you might need to worry about your child's diet. Another way of saying 91% of the students scored lower is we could also say that 9% of the students scored higher. Remember, everything's out of 100%, and that's a whole thing. So if I want to know the higher amount, I would do 100 minus 91, and that would give me that 9%. So we can find the lower and the higher just based off of this notation that we have here, so the 91st percentile. Now, as far as education goes, which is what we're focusing on, another thing that we can use is a ranking. So a ranking would just base out of your class, and they would say the top person is called the valedictorian. Their rank is 1. And the salutatorian's rank 2, and they keep on going. And this is used a lot when trying to get scholarships and in certain schools. So we're going to practice going back and forth between ranking and percentile, because ranking tells kind of the opposite. If you're ranked first, you have everybody else below you and no one's above you. The percentile is going to do the other thing. They want to tell you how many people are lower than you. So we're going to have to go back and forth between these two. Also remember that percentile is a percent. We use our percent sign. So we're going to be multiplying that, a percent of something. There. Both of these have two different ways to work it, so I'll work them both ways. So for this first one, Aiden was ranked 84th in his class of 200 students. What was his percentile? One way to think about it is I need to turn this into a percent. So a percent is a part of a whole. So he was 84, that was Aiden's part, out of the whole, which was 200. That was my whole student body. So if I divide that out, that's going to give me 0.42 or 42%. Now I'm not quite done because my ranking tells me how many people are above me. The valedictorian, the salutatorian, so 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way to 83. They're all above me. Percentile tells below me. So I need to take this 42% or 0.42 and subtract it from 1. Because remember, 1 is the whole thing. So 1 minus this 42% or 42 hundredths, or however we want to say that, is going to give me 58%, or the 58th percentile. So I'm going to write my answer. as the 58th percentile. Remember that capital P means percentile. Now there's another way that we can work this same problem. So I'll change colors here. Instead of turning it to a percent to start with, I could do my subtracting to start with. We're still going to have to subtract and divide, but I'm just going to change the order. So 84 tells me how many people are above me. So one thing I could do is go ahead and do my subtracting. I can figure out how many people are below me. So 200 minus 84 is going to give me 116. Then do my percent. So I would do 116 divided by 200. And that again, of course, is going to give me that 58%. Either way, we've got to subtract and divide, but the order that we choose to do it is not important, whichever works best for you. My next example, we're going to go backwards. I'm going to give you the percentile, and we need to figure out the class and the ranking. Again, this one's going to have two different ways to work it. The order isn't important, but the operations are. Since I'm dealing with a percent, I don't have to divide. I've already done the division part because I've given you the percentile. So I'm going to do the opposite of that. I'm going to multiply. So I'm going to take the 20% and write it as a decimal. I'm going to multiply that by 30 because that's how many people were in this class. So 20% times 30 gives me 6. So this tells me there are 6 students below Dean. I have to do that subtraction again. The whole, last time I used 1 because I was dealing with percents. Now I'm using students. So there are 30 students minus 6. So that's going to tell me that Dean was in the 24th ranking. He was ranked 24th. Same sort of work or same problem, slightly different work here. If I didn't want to go ahead and do my multiplication, I could subtract first. So I could subtract 1 minus my 20%. Again, since I'm using the percent, I've got to use 1. Do my subtracting, and that's going to give me 80%. That's going to tell me how many people are above Dean. 80% of the students are above Dean. So I'm going to take my 80% and I'm going to multiply by 30, and of course that's going to give me 24 again. So his ranking, either way we want to do it, his ranking is 24th.